Hey guys, welcome to my channel. It's Dr. Jasmine here, and I'm so excited to share with you a personal story today. This time, it's just not me interviewing, it's not just me talking. I have with me my girl Tiffany Reneé from the Muse and the Messenger. If you have listened to the Girl Go Global podcast, you know her. But if you have not, you are in for a treat. And you are in for a treat particularly because she is my girl. That's my friend. And I don't hang with people who are not dope, who are not fabulous. And that is why she's here to interview me. So sit back, enjoy our conversation, and I look forward to you just letting me know in the comments what you think.
Dr. Jazz, you have done what many cannot. You got me sitting on the couch in front of a camera. But I couldn't be more honored. For so many, we've been storytellers, and we have told so many people's stories, and we've written them, and we were in the background. And today, plot twist.
Plot twist, right?
Plot twist. So today, you've decided to be the story.
How about that?
And share with us a deeply personal journey.
Yes.
And so I am, again, honored that you would choose me and ask me to sit and have this conversation with.
I couldn't think of no better person, honestly, particularly because not only because you're a good friend of mine, but more so because you're good at this, right? And you're good at pulling out stuff from people in ways that are authentic, caring, empathetic, as well as really, you kind of went with me through the journey. So who else would I choose?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you for that. So should we let the people in on this life that you've been living privately?
That's why we're here, girl.
Okay.
So I'm ready.
So, I'm a candid, straight to the point kind of person, right? You fought cancer and you won.
How about that? Thank God.
You fought cancer and you won. I don't even know where to begin with this conversation. It's a lot that we can kind of go into, but let's just start from the very beginning and let's just make our way through the journey. And I am here and I will hold your hand.
Thank you.
The entire way, okay?
I'm getting emotional, actually.
Well, if you get emotional, we got tissues.
I'm sharing something that when people listen to this, it's going to be like many of my own family members who don't even know.
Wow.
So I'm getting emotional just because of that, you know what I mean? But also just because I have not publicly shared. It's been a few people here and there, some of my closest knit family and things of that nature, but
we kind of did it together, if we're being completely honest. I had an experience. I shared it with you after I had held it to myself for about 2 years. And then weeks later or months later, you shared with me what you were going through. So let's go back. You go and you get a mammogram. Is this your first mammogram? Have you ever had a mammogram before?
Well, I'm going to roll it back further. We're in a pandemic.
Okay.
My husband and I drove to Florida to visit his family. We didn't want to take COVID there, so we stayed isolated. We drove all the way to Florida from Maryland because we were staying with his parents, and obviously we don't want to take COVID to their home. So we got there, stayed there, had a good time 2 weeks. Had not been off from work, had not been traveling, obviously due to COVID. And a few days before we decided to leave, it was time for us to leave. We stayed there about 2 weeks. I found a lump. I woke up 7 o'clock in the morning, just had an itch under my left breast, and I scratched and I said, "Oh, what's that?" You know what I mean? And I'm shaking my husband, waking him up, feel this. You know what I mean? And I said, "I think that's a lump," right? And so it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I wake up and I say, "Okay, I got to call my doctor." I waited till about 8:30 to call my GYN to get an appointment. I got an emergency appointment for the following day, Tuesday or so, when I got back home. So no, I had not had a mammogram, to answer your question. I was 39, newly married. We had just celebrated 1 year of marriage in a pandemic. So we got married May 2019, pandemic. We traveled to Florida in August 2020. That's when I found the lump. And so my life has been forever changed since that moment.
Okay. So we all know that if we find a lump, for those who have found a lump, we know that the first thing we do, like you said, we call our doctor, and then usually we go through all these tests. We go through another mammogram. Maybe they do a biopsy. It's this back and forth. They do ultrasounds, things of that nature. So you go through that. When do you get the diagnosis?
Well, I went to my GYN that Tuesday, like I said. And it's like, people may say, well, how do you remember these dates? Like, certain dates are like kind of like engrafted in my mind.
Absolutely.
Because, after all this time, I still know which day, how it happened, just because this is a life-changing moment. So, but to answer your question, I go to the doctor. She literally says, I don't think it's anything. She said, it may be a cyst. This happens to young women all the time. It should go away after your cycle or whatever, so many days or whatever. And I'm like, no. I'm, getting dressed from her after she examined me. And I said, I want a biopsy. And she looks at me and I said, I want a biopsy. You know what I mean? Breast cancer runs in my family. My grandmother and my great-grandmother were diagnosed. I think my great-grandmother may have passed from breast cancer before I was born, but my grandmother did not pass away from it. She was treated and she was fine. But I needed a biopsy and I had to advocate for myself. So what if I had just walked away trusting what my doctor said? Not to say that I shouldn't trust my doctor, but I need proof.
Well, some of them we shouldn't trust.
Well, how about that?
Let's be real. Again, we share these similar experiences. So shout out to you for advocating for yourself. I think people just blindly trust doctors, right? And sometimes we can't do that, especially as Black women. We can't do that.
We can't.
There's a disparity and it exists and we know about it. And so we can't be closed-mouthed about it. So I commend you for advocating for yourself and just letting the people know, like, if they don't offer you a biopsy, you can ask for one.
And if they say no, you can go to another doctor. How
absolutely.
About that? You have insurance for a reason.
So I'm so glad that you did that and you set that example for whoever may see this or whoever may hear this, that you can advocate for yourself. And I encourage you to advocate for yourself like you did. So we can imagine how that feels and the surprise that's associated with someone telling you you have breast cancer or you're being challenged with breast cancer. How did it surprise you beyond what we can imagine?
Well, just to kind of like go back a little bit, 2 doctors told me that it was nothing. My GYN in that moment, and I'm not discrediting I love my GYN. And she did not hesitate to write the order for me to go see the breast surgeon. So thank God for that. Right. When I actually saw the breast surgeon, he did the same thing. He was feeling like, this doesn't feel like, I guess, what it normally, after he had been practicing for over 40 years. So obviously he has experience in this. And he said, but it's going to be fine. He tested and then it came back. Stage 1B, triple negative breast cancer. But before I guess I got the final diagnosis, when it was like all the uncertainty, my GYN said, oh no, I don't think it's anything, the surgeon. But in between that time, I also had an ultrasound. So the radiologist, she examined me. So the tech kept going in and out the room. She went in and out of the room about, I guess, maybe 3 or 4 times. I said,
that may have unnerved
that
me.
last time, I'm like, you want to tell me what's going on. Like, literally, I told her, you want to tell me what's going on. You're going in and out of the room. And my heart is like pounding.
Right.
So the first time I really heard it was from the radiologist. How about that?
Wow.
So
they're not even supposed to do that.
They're not even supposed to do that. But
I mean, to ease your concern.
Right. Did. So the tech came in and out and she says, I think it's cancer. So I'm sitting there, I'm stunned. I'm literally staring out into space. And they're like, I don't know, I can't even remember whether I'm crying or what, but I just know that I'm like shocked. Why am I shocked? I'm shocked because anybody who knows me, I eat clean. I'm halfway vegan, pescatarian, organic, juicing.
You're part of the reason why I started eating clean. Like, let's be clear.
So it's like, how did this happen to me?
Right.
Then, so this is COVID. So my husband is out.
I was going to say, where's Brian?
He is out in the lobby area. Can't come in the waiting room or anything. This is COVID. I come out, I look both ways in the hallway, and he's on my right, and he's coming down, and I almost collapse in his arms.
Jesus.
And he's like, oh, babe. And he's basically picking me up, and I'm crying. So that's when I first heard it. So, I get home, I talk to my mom about what happened. We praying. You like,
right? Because that's what we do,
right? And so at this time, by this point, we're still waiting for the breast surgeon to call with the diagnosis or to contact me based upon what happened with the pathology report. So I'm waiting for the pathology report.
Okay.
And guess when I was diagnosed officially? After the pathology report and everything. The same day we learned about Chadwick Boseman passing away. So my husband and I are in the basement watching TV, and I get the call from my doctor about 6 p.m. He calls, and I'm just staring at it because I'd already heard it once, right? So
unbeknownst to this doctor, though.
Right, he didn't know. No one know. I don't think that this might even be the first time I'm kind of like saying it out loud in a way. But so in this moment, I'm like, okay, God.
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do? Like, I mean, this not...
You gonna bust a move?
Right.
Like, how are we doing
Because
this?
I know this is not my end. I know I got prophecy over my life. I know that there is so much more to me than this. So, yeah, that's when I learned officially.
So now you're literally about to privately be in the fight of your life. Literally, right? And then publicly, no one has any idea. I mean, I knew. And I think maybe, I know your mother and your sisters knew, maybe a couple of other friends, but that's it.
That's it.
Like, people at work didn't know. I remember you were very clear. Tiffany, I'm telling you this. I have not told anyone else. And I just remember sitting on this phone and I am looking into space because I don't even remember like what it was I was staring at. But all I heard was one of my closest friends is about to have to fight privately. So what weapons we choosing and how are we going to get through this? Because I don't think I ever looked at it as Jasmine has X, Y, and Z.
I appreciate that.
I always looked at it as how we going to get through this. And I remember saying that to you on the phone. Okay, we got you. Like, all right. Like, in my house, tears are flowing, right? But on the phone, I'm like, all right, what we going to do? Get yourself together. You get 5 emotional minutes.
Yeah, that's
you get 5 emotional minutes. And if your 5 emotional minutes mean 5 weeks or 5 months, that's cool. But take the time you need, but know that we're going to fight this and we are going to win. And nobody has to know about it if that's how you want it.
It was kind of like, I know, and I'm not knocking anybody who shares publicly. They go to social or they, I don't know, they just broadcast it for themselves in a way that makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more about call for the elders. Who can pray for me?
Yeah.
Who can give me a word from the Lord to give me the comfort that I need to get through this moment? And so my first thought is not to just broadcast it. It is to hear what God is saying. And what do I need to do to understand what the Lord is saying about the situation, why this is happening, and to get my marching orders? Because one thing about me, once I'm laser focused, I'm locked in, literally. So if I know what the Lord is saying to me in this moment and what the strategy is to overcome it, that's it. So I don't need people who don't know how to pray.
Or don't believe.
Or just
don't know what to say.
Exactly. Or not speaking life or calling you and meaning well, but triggering
and dismantling things.
Yes.
I remember one thing that we said, and we said this over again. I remember we were talking and you were like, well, I'm like, nope, you challenged with. I remember like we started rephrasing how we were talking about this thing.
I have never called it.
You've never owned it.
I called it the diagnosis.
Yeah. And
Like, nah.
like I often say, the journey. Like I never say, I hardly ever give it a name because I don't want to give it energy. And I'm one person that really believes that when the thing you give energy is the thing that grows.
For sure.
And so I remember us being very intentional when we discussed it, what we were discussing. And we never really discussed what we didn't want to happen. We only focused on exactly what we wanted to happen. And we allowed God to deal with the how.
Yeah.
We just knew that this is what it is, and this will be. And I remember always, like, we used to say, like, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well with you.
Yeah.
And look at you now.
Yeah. How about that? Look at God.
So I think when you started and you embarked on the journey, you had set it up so that this is what we're focusing on. And I mean, sis, you got tunnel vision. You completely got tunnel vision, and you do that with any challenge or project in life.
Yeah.
It wasn't just this. You wanted to write a book. You got tunnel vision.
Yeah.
You wanted to do, so you've always done that. But with all of these things being said, and all the positive, all the love, the light that we were sharing, your family was sharing, your husband, we'll get to him, but your husband was sharing. There were good days, and then there were not so good days. And then there was those bad days that required an extra push, those days that required some extra encouragement, those days where if I didn't hear from you for a certain number of days, we were reaching out. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Like, what's going on? And you would just say what was happening. I can only imagine the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And I heard you in real time, in real life. What didn't you show? Well, we know you didn't show the world anything, but what didn't you show the rest of us?
I didn't show, the emotion. It wasn't that I was trying to act like nothing was happening. I was kind of thankful for the opportunity to be able to be in private. You know what I mean? We were in a pandemic. Sneakily, for me, that was a blessing. I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to go into the office and be around people that I wasn't planning to share with in the first place.
Yeah.
These are my coworker friends in a way. But, what I didn't share were, there were some nights when I cried, or nights literally when we would go to sleep. My husband would we would listen to healing scriptures all night. Turn on YouTube. Soaking scriptures all night. And that's the only thing that was able to help me sleep.
I know you physically experienced this by yourself, but everybody who said they was there for you and was supporting you, they were experiencing this thing right along with you. And although we may not have felt it, because there were days where your energy were low, there were days when you just didn't have it to give. And I remember those days, and you still tried to give it. I remember people saying, Jasmine, you just need the rest. Like, just rest, Jazz, you just need the rest,
Yeah.
You just need the rest. You want to go walking.
Well, I needed to keep my energy up.
Yeah.
One of the things that especially when I started with chemotherapy, and I know we're going to talk about that, but, I needed to, working out just gives you that energy, just walking, and we were, would go riding bikes or different things, especially before the treatment. But that was my way of leaning into, what I know that I needed to do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I guess I did the bulk of the work. I got diagnosed in August. I didn't start treatment until December.
It was later in that year, I remember.
Yeah, I didn't start treatment for a number of reasons. Fertility, preservation.
And we're going to get there, yeah.
Just getting, we didn't just take the first diagnosis. We had several second opinions. So for us, it was just, and my book, I was working on my book. It was just so many things.
This is what I know. And what the people don't know is that, okay, so the diagnosis came in the summer. In between August and December, I think it was, you were working on your book.
Yes.
You were taking care of me. like people don't know, like you literally, I had my surgery to remove my those lumps in October. You would send big deliveries of food like to my house, and I'm sitting here like, this girl has her own thing going on, but she like, what y'all want to eat this week?
Well,
and then she stopped calling me, and you called Jace, and you asked Jace because I was like, she can't do all of this for us. She need to do what she need to do for her. And you would be like, well, what? Panera would show up. Then, like all kinds of food would show up. And I'm thinking like, well, who's doing this for you? And I remember being stuck because I couldn't even move my arms at the time. But as soon as I was able to move my arms, and I was like, okay, God, you know what you're doing. Because I was down. But December, I got up. Okay? In December, I got up. And that's when you started going in for like surgery.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to find a juice place. Like, where can I get her some cold pressed juice? I can't be there to press it for her. But I know she will drink this, because
I'm juicing, and that's my thing.
Juicing and you taking, herbs and things of that nature, and maybe you're not eating food because, I hear that treatment, you mess with your taste buds, and we'll get there. But I just remember like, okay, God's never going to put everybody down at the same time.
Yeah, how about that?
Somebody going to be up. So when I was down, you was up, and you did a great job. You were still being a great friend, walking around with this heavy, heavy thing to carry. You were still being a great wife. You were still being a great sister. You were still being a great daughter. You were still working at full capacity. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and then you decided you was going to take on another project. I remember you called me like, I just got to work on this book. And what do you think about this? And can you read it? I'm thinking like, this girl has lost her mind.
But to my defense, the book was in, I started working on a book during the pandemic.
I know. You wanted to finish it before.
No, the Lord spoke to me and said, finish the book by September.
Oh, I remember that conversation.
Yeah, the Lord spoke to me. I was getting up, and I felt like I had this mandate on my life, finish this book. Like, my husband was like, I want to go this place this weekend. I want to travel here. I'm like, no. The only time I have to write is on the weekend. Like, I'm working full time, and I need to write. So that's the time. On the evenings or on the weekends when I had the time to kind of have that dedicated time. But I lied to you not. Before we traveled back in that August 2020, I finished the first draft July. So I started...
And gave me a hefty deadline to finish reading it. Let's be clear, be honest.
But the thing is, God knows. He told me finish by September. I finished at least the first draft, and I started working with the self-publishing consultant when I was in Florida.
And the editing started
then. And editing and all that. So while I was going through this diagnosis, I said, well, now, Lord, I know why you told me to finish the book.
Yeah. It made sense. Everything, everything aligns.
Some of the things that I wrote in my book, Heart Rhythms, Surviving Singleness with Faith, Know-How, and Grit, I had to kind of like reach back and lean into.
And apply
for this moment. I said, well, God, you got a funny way of showing up.
Listen, but at least God show up. Okay, I don't care if you I don't care if you show up funny acting. Just show up for me,
Yeah.
And thank you for showing up for my friend. You mentioned something earlier. You said like this diagnosis came only, a year after being married. Mm-hmm. Your husband was now not just your husband. He was the caregiver, caretaker, right? And so those vows went into play.
Yeah, immediately.
Okay. Sooner than I think either one of you thought that y'all were going to have to like make good and stand 10 toes down on what you said, Sure. So the thing is, what God would give you exactly what you asked God for, just to see if you're going to do what you said you was going to do.
How about that?
Right. And so your husband was your caregiver. How did this affect your future? Because see, I know some other things y'all were working on during this time. And I don't know if you want to share that. You can if you would like. But y'all were working on some other things. So how did that affect the future?
Well, I guess we had decided after we got married that we wanted to wait 1 year before we started family planning.
Imagine that time and impact.
Right, how about that? So we said we're gonna wait a year, and he's the one, how about this, that encouraged me to see a fertility doctor. Before that year was up, he was like, I think you should go and let's talk about freezing eggs, let's do all that. you know, I guess he know, well, she older, you know. You know,
Is that what he said?
No, he didn't
No,
say
he
that.
didn't.
But
Exactly.
acknowledging that we were not young when we got married.
Okay,
So
yeah.
acknowledging that, you know, we needed it. And maybe it was, I don't want to say maybe, but maybe it was God leading them. So, you know, I said, oh, okay. I hadn't really thought about it much, actually. You know, and that's, by the way, I wish people doctors would encourage older women who still want to have kids to, you know, look into.
Well, let's operationally define this old word you keep using, because
I'm saying
fertility
when
wise,
you are older, past 35, even 30, some women have challenge. Even though some women in their 20s have
don't they
challenge.
start calling us like geriatric pregnancies?
Yes,
and stuff?
they do. Yes,
Yeah,
they do.
I
But
take
it
a
is true
chance.
that we biologically, science, we would trust the science.
What happened to the new 30 is 40 and the new like?
No, not when it comes to them eggs. Them eggs go away every
Those
year.
eggs.
Those eggs that we need to be fertilized. They need.
Okay, all right, fine, all right.
You know what I'm saying? So my point is just to check. Just check. Get your
like it.
levels
I'm here
and see
for
what's
it.
going on, where you are in the stage of life. And if you're
Okay.
good, that's not your way. But for me, that's what we decided. We went, and I started seeing a fertility doctor in January of, I guess it was 2020.
That reminds me of this book, Soul Print by Mark Batterson. Mm-hmm. So it talks about how, just like we have a fingerprint, we have a soul print. And if you look back on your life, everything that you did prior to, it readies you for the next thing. Mm-hmm. And you saying, you know, wait, God saying to write the book by September, you write it by July, you get a diagnosis in August, okay? Then you said, Brian came in like, oh, why don't we just check the fertility doctor out?
Yeah.
Let's start working with the fertility doctor. You start doing that prior to, so you know where you are, you know what you're dealing with. And I believe that, you know, knowledge is power, right? So when you know what you're working with, you also know what you have access to and resources that you might need to get. Right. So, okay, bro, I hear you. My bro said, let me put all this in order. And all of those things led up to you being properly prepared for what was next.
We started seeing them when I went through the various tests that you go through when you start that process. And everything seemed fine.
Right.
So we were kind of going to start the egg preservation process. Then COVID hit and the hospitals closed. So we did not get to that part.
Okay.
So that's what we were kind of like planning. We were planning for our family. And so when I get the diagnosis, I called the doctor, sent her an emergency message, like, I need to do this now. And so she's shocked when she get this message. You know, actually, when I end up having my appointment, letting her know what the diagnosis was and all of those things. And they consulted with my doctors, the oncologists, the whole care team, if you will, that was involved to determine next steps, whether I could or had time enough to go through egg preservation or whether, you know, I just needed to just jump right into treatments and things. So it was decided that I did have time. Okay. And so that's one of the things, like sometimes people feel rushed to do certain things. Like I said, I got diagnosed August. I didn't start treatment until December. Right. And that's particularly because we were going through, like I said, second and third opinions, as well as we went through the egg preservation process, and I was able to freeze some eggs.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
That's a blessing, you know. Thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
So we go through this. So now we're in December, right? We are at the end of 2020. And so now treatment starts. Walk me through the treatment plan. And I was able to witness, well, you didn't even want to show me some of the effects that the treatment had on you, but you did. And I love you. And, you know, I held space for that. Because I know you. You'll go inward, you know what I mean, because it's safe there. But sometimes us going inward is not so safe when it attacks things that we are used to having. Our hair. Yeah. Our fingernails.
Yeah, you know how long my hair was.
And I know how thick it was. Yes. And I remember you used to complain about how thick the hair was. And we used to be in the office trying to, you know, work it out and, you know. But your hair was resilient then? And it is resilient
Yes,
now.
honey.
So shout out to thick hair. Shout out to all those days you was mad it took 5 hours for it to dry.
Right.
When you wanted to go out right away. Like, it is always a reason for it. So let's go through treatment.
Yeah.
How did that work?
It took me a lot to even decide that I was going to go through chemo.
I know.
And I remember one time you said to me, Jazz, take the chemo.
Because you my girl, right? And we sometimes when you get to a certain level in friendship, all the niceties got to go out the window sometimes because your fear will start getting in. And I have never been that friend to let fear stop my friends from doing anything. Do it afraid, but we gonna do it.
So it was like you said, I'm not a big go to the doctor kind of person. Obviously, I get it's not my treatments, but, physicals, and I see my gynecologist, regularly, all those things. But as far as taking a lot of medicine.
No, you do that with food and roots.
And I'm the fruits, how we change not diet girl.
Yeah.
So it was like, do I need this? Are you sure that I need this? It's more like, tell me again why I need this.
Exactly.
Is this the absolute only way?
Oh, I remember.
So we had so many diagnoses, and I want to also kind of just acknowledge, my full care team, in a sense of I work with a compound pharmacist. And he's a licensed practicing medical doctor pharmacist. He just compounds medicine, but he does not focus on pain meds or any type of kind of narcotic type of pain medication. He does all herbs, all roots, all kind of healthy kind of ways to treat illnesses. And so he focuses on a whole person in different ways than most doctors.
Right.
And sneakily, I was recommended to him for something else, dealing with fibroids by my gynecologist. She not only does
that was the man who did the packs, right?
What you mean?
The packs you used to put on your stomach.
Oh, the castor packs and all of that. All kinds of natural things I'm into.
I remember because you told me Tiff, you might need to get a pack.
So he helped me, I want to say, prepare my body for chemo.
Absolutely.
So we worked together out with a plan to say, okay, you're not having treatment till X date. We got 2-3 months to get this right. So I was on high dose herbs and types of vitamin type supplements, if you will, to help prepare my body. I was on some medications to help preserve my hair, help with hair growth, and to help with joint pain, all kinds of things that come with the side effects of going through chemotherapy.
Proper preparation.
So I'm taking my bedroom nightstand like a pharmacy, right? Just herbs, and I'm juicing. My mother and sister are helping me. They're juicing for me at this point, every 2 weeks, delivering me mason jars full of kale juice, spinach juice, or just a mix of fruit and vegetable juices, because that's one at that time that was just preparing and cleansing, cleansing my body, preparing my body for the chemo, which they did that up until I finished chemo and even after. Mm-hmm. But it's like my whole care team.
Village.
Not only, did I have an oncologist, a surgeon, but I also had a compound natural pharmacist, natural doctor. My mother, who was helping me with the food side of things.
Spiritual care.
My spiritual care. Even our pastor that we consult with, who actually married us. My husband's pastor, Apostle Anya Hall, was very influential in that. Another woman who, literally, I have to acknowledge, not just them, but also my whole care team, as far as my spiritual advisors, my mindset, all of that led me to getting ready for chemo, right? And literally, there was a woman who I had not spoken to since, I guess it was maybe 2013, 2014. She lives in Turks and Caicos, or did live in Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean, West Indies. And she calls me out of the blue. And she calls me on WhatsApp. She got my number from somebody and says, she started singing to me, "I am the God who healeth thee." She don't, mind you, I told you I ain't told nobody. At this point, not even my aunts, my mom's sisters,
And the
or
people
uncles
who knew couldn't say anything. I remember you
didn't
were
know.
very stern with us.
And by this time, so the Lord had that woman to call me and tell me that the Lord had assigned her to my case and that she was going to be praying for me. She didn't even know what was going on. So it was people like that who were showing up for me, the doctors, and I call all those people my care team, my village, if that's the term you want to use.
I feel like it was a village mentality.
Yeah. And so I get my port place in November 30th. I told you I know all these dates. I get the port place on my right side in my chest.
I remember you showed me.
And I start chemo early December. I think it was like December the 2nd, a few days later.
Yeah, it was.
And it was tough, really, really tough. I would have anxiety the night before I had chemo. So I had to have basically 16 treatments. So triple negative.
And you were counting down. I remember, like, the countdown was real. Like,
yeah, triple negative breast cancer is one of the most aggressive forms of breast cancer that you can be diagnosed with. And typically, it's diagnosed for African American women. But there was no history of, some of those genes that they test you for. I had the testing to test my genes. I did not have the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genes, but something's going on because, like I said, my grandmother and my great-grandmother were diagnosed. And so, having said that, going through those 16 treatments. So the first 4 treatments were high dose treatments every other week. And they told me that my hair was going to fall out maybe by the second treatment. My hair did not fall out completely until like the 3rd or 4th treatment.
that hair was like, and I am telling you, I'm not going.
It
Okay.
did not all the way fall out. It started, I guess, falling out, in the middle and the sides. And then one day, I just got in the mirror and said, it's time to cut it.
Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed my story and my testimony. I can't say that it's been easy to tell my story in this way, but I hope you're able to glean a little something from me to help you with your personal triumphs and struggles. So that's a wrap for part 1 of my testimony. But wait, there's more. Check out part 2 on YouTube or on the Girl Go Global podcast. And by the way, I'd love to learn more about what you think, or for you to tell me about a time when you walked with God through a healing journey. But that's all for now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.